was 19 years old. I was working in a grocery store. I had just been there a little over 3 years and had I think it was an upgrade. I was in the dairy department, stocking milk for 2 of those years. I was in a cool position in the deli, like I can cut meat and cheese, and yeah, I'm going to go do that. And so I was working the deli that last year, and one night I was working, there was this black streak across the front of the deli counter, like out on the linoleum. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever had a boss like this, where they may be kind of power tripping a little bit, you have a hard time getting along with them, it seems like they're barking orders a lot. Like, I had a boss like that, not even just a direct department manager, but this guy was like assistant store manager. So he was kind of the dude to the dude, all right? He's supervising that night. He comes by the deli counter, and he sees this black streak, like someone took their dress shoe and just dragged it across the floor. And so I don't remember if he asked me or just straight up told me. It's like, I need you to come out here and clean this up. So being a punk 19-year-old kid, like, that's outside my department. Like, and I told him that. Like, that's outside my department. Like, that's produce's problem. No, I don't care if it's outside your department. I told you to clean it up, okay? I got it. Oh, I'll get it. Which that should have been my first response. So I get the mop, I get the bucket, I get out there and clean this black streak up, and the floor looks awesome. And got back behind the deli counter, and I said a few choice words to my coworker that I thought were in confidence. You know how sometimes you say stuff and you think it's in confidence and it's really not? Yeah, it wasn't. And the words goose-stepping Nazi may or may not have came out of my punk 19-year-old mouth. In case you're wondering, like, you shouldn't talk like that about your manager. Ever. Because odds are good it's going to come back around, and sure enough it did. Because it was a matter of a couple days later, I get a phone call on the day off, need you to come in and have this awkward meeting with the assistant store manager. So some things were shared. I was basically removed from the department. Told I was going to get put back on the register and rescheduled the following week. Well, you come back in a week and another week after that. Like, eventually you're just never rescheduled 2 or 3 weeks later, and so you just quit showing up to work. It's more or less fired / quit. I don't know. The point to the story, church, is number one, you don't call your assistant store manager a Nazi. That's a bad idea. The other thing you do is you obey that authority over you. Because instead of just obeying him right away and speaking well of him, I totally dishonored him. I totally disrespected him and didn't do what he told me to do right away. This morning, church, we're looking at a piece of text in regards to the church in a land under a really quite dictator, authoritative leadership that is completely ungodly. Quite the monster, in fact. The Christians were under the control and rule of Rome, and Nero was in charge, and he was pitching and tarring Christians, lighting them on fire, and using them as street lamps so he could race his chariot around at night. So if you offended the emperor, like, you weren't just removed from your department, you weren't just never rescheduled, you were burned alive. So he could see at night riding his sweet chariot. Like, this is the environment we find the church in 1 Peter. If you've been with us the last few weeks, this is now week 3 of this series we're calling Exiles. What do you do when God has elected you to be strangers in a foreign land? He has elected you to be exiles among a very ungodly culture. So to recap a little bit, let's turn to 1 Peter chapter 2 this morning. It should be on about page 1014, 1015. We're going to look at a verse or two that Mike wrapped up with last week. To understand our context and where we're going to continue to go this morning is that we see some instruction from Peter given to the church, given to Christians at that time, as to how they're meant to handle authority over them. And it's not exactly fun. So we see in chapter 2, verse 11 and 12, Peter writes this: "Beloved, I urge you, as sojourners and exiles, to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. Peter is trying to write the Christians under this persecution to encourage them in the hope that they have in Jesus. That there's a living hope in Jesus, that even though they're facing this hard time right now, there's hope at the end of the tunnel. In the meantime, here's what we need to be doing to conduct ourselves. And so there may be times even now in your own life, your own circle of influence, your job, your circle of friends, where you feel like that stranger in a foreign land. Church, have hope that there's more in Jesus. So we see a couple words in those two verses that pop out and will continue to pop out in this following section. This word good and this word honorable or honor. And Peter continues to write about these words, this idea of doing good among the Gentiles, this idea of being honorable among the Gentiles. And so we continue to read today's text, starting at verse 13. Peter says this: "Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil, and to praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you put to silence the ignorant, foolish people. Live as people who are free, using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor." Peter starts this section off with a couple words. Be subject. What does that mean? Be subject. This idea of being subject means this: to be placed or situated under, lying below or in a lower situation, to be placed under the power of another, maybe specifically law, owing allegiance to a particular sovereign or state. So in this case, allegiance to the government, allegiance to Rome, allegiance to Nero. Peter, are you kidding me? This guy's a tyrant. He's a monster. He just burned my brother-in-law last week. You're saying I need to be subject. You know, this word subject, and depending on what translation you're looking at this morning, and we use the ESV here, but if you're looking at the New International Version or another text, there's another word that's at least as less tasty, if not more so, than what we see here. This word is submit. If you're reading the NIV, it says, submit yourselves to every human institution. So this idea of submission, the action or fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or to the will or authority of another person. Now, I don't know about you, church, but this is a tough byword. This is a tough pill to swallow. To submit, we don't do that much in our culture. Part of it is because we have an agenda, and if whatever we're called to do isn't part of our agenda, like we're not going to fall in line well. Some of that's our pride. But to say submit, it's this idea of giving up, of yielding, of if you're a fan of UFC and MMA, you're like this idea of tapping out. You got these two brutal guys in the cage, or sometimes brutal girls, and they're just beating the snot out of each other. And so one of them gets the other one in a rear naked choke. And if that person doesn't tap out, it's going to be lights out. It'll choke you out. It's not fun. Not stopping your breathing is not fun. But in the meantime, giving up is also not fun. And most of us don't like to quit. I can't tell you how many friends in high school or people I've seen just up and quit something. Now, granted, I was never the best athlete. I tried to play football and wrestle for 6 years. The whole football thing, that did not give me much playing time, because when you weigh 175 pounds, even as a senior, and you're trying to play Class A football, as a lineman, it doesn't work. And so while you practice and you're getting hurt in practice, not even getting on the field, I was done. But that was the only time I'd ever quit a sport. They gave out this, I don't know, you could call it an award. It was Scout Player of the Week. It was basically like, as a secondary person, you showed the most hustle and the most heart that week. Here's a crappy visor. So I got that, and then I quit the next week. That might have been 4 games this season, and I was done, because it wasn't worth my time. But it took a lot to have that conversation with my coach. Like, this isn't my character. I don't like stopping stuff. I don't like quitting. But I also didn't want to sacrifice my wrestling season that year. It was my senior. Well, that ended up being cruddy too, so it didn't matter. But we don't, in our nature, we often don't like to quit. We don't want to tap out. We don't want to submit. And this is St. Peter saying, look, you've got this tyrant authority over you. Be subject to every human institution. The emperor, the governor. If we want to put it in a smaller nutshell, church, we could say, be subject to your government. And really, we can say, Peter is calling us as Christians. God is saying, look, even in this foreign land, even in a land that has this crazy persecution and rule over you, be a good citizen. Be a good citizen. Because there are governors, there are law enforcement over you, and they're going to punish you if you do evil, and they're going to praise you if you do good. It could be something as simple as like, man, we're just going to drive like a normal, sane person. We're going to do things like using our turn signal and obeying the speed limit. And that turn signal thing, like, man, it chaps my cheeks because in all my years of driving, like, that's the only thing I ever got ticketed for. An illegal lane change. What even is that? Officer, I didn't even see where you came from. Like, you were not behind me a second ago. I'm just trying to get some Taco Bell with my friends. And we're going back to school. Like, well, your blinker must not work. No, I know my blinker works. Whatever. We're good citizens. But at what end? And to whose sake or benefit are we good citizens? Well, we read it at the top of verse 13. It says, for the Lord's sake. Be subject for the Lord's sake, not your own. And again, it may not benefit you because obeying the laws of the land, it may not be something we're interested in because that's not our agenda. And the laws of the land interfere with the things that we want to do, but yet we continue to pursue sin. And if the law of the land tells you we're not supposed to pursue sin, well, God's looking out for us. Some of those laws are there for a reason. Some of those laws uphold the same law that God has. So for the Lord's sake, who's the Lord? Well, it's Christ. So for the sake of Christ, for Christ's sake, subject. Doing youth ministry, whether it's here at the church or downtown at Youth and Families for Christ, like, we know we need volunteers. We know we need good people to stand in the gap for these young people. And so sometimes we have random folks that show up or just walk in our door or call and say, I'm interested in being a volunteer. Like, what does that look like here? How do I get plugged in? And it's great because we need that. There was one particular afternoon I was downtown and I had a young man come in and kind of a peer of mine, about the same age or so, and he's starting to share his story with me a little bit. And while there was this great story of redemption there and how he said God had saved him from this life of addiction and drug abuse and some junk that he was living, like, there was some red flags in there too. And he made a comment. He says, I just want to be a good person for humanity's sake. Alright? Like, well, that's all fine and good, and we need good people. Like, just because you're good doesn't mean you know Jesus. We gave the guy an application, and he went on his way, and he never came back. We probably would have been saying no anyway, because that heart wasn't there. You just want to be a good person, or do you want kids to know Jesus? Because that's what we're about. And he's saying we do these good deeds. We use our freedom to do good and to pursue righteousness because, church, our community is watching. And if we rebel, if we do the same thing the rest of the community does, then as a Christian, how are we any different? We're not. And then in doing our good deeds, this is you silence the ignorance and foolish talk. That sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? Like, I don't know if you guys are the same way. And again, it's maybe a pride issue, but like, you have someone who's yakking about something they don't know, and it's nice to put a sock in their mouth. Like, shh, you're not. No more. Right? Like, I'm sure you've been there. There's things I don't know what I'm talking about either, and I usually try to shut up, but it's kind of fun to make other people be quiet once in a while. And so Peter's saying kind of the same thing twice already this morning. In verse 11 and 12, that as they speak of you as evildoers, they see your good deeds, and instead of bashing you, they give glory to God. And they see your good deeds, and you silence foolish talk. Now keep in mind, church, while we're meant to do good, that's not the thing that saves you. We read the words of the Apostle Paul in Ephesians. And in chapter 2, verses 8 and 10, Paul says this. He reminds us of this and where our salvation comes from. And he says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God. Not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." You see, church, there's not enough traffic laws or anything you can obey. There's not enough little old ladies you can walk across the street or help with their groceries or enough sandman and meet need things that you can do to earn your salvation. Christ is extending it to you today. And it is a gift on the table, and it's through faith and grace that you're saved. But in the meantime, we are made in Christ Jesus to do good, to pursue righteousness. And as a result of that, let me say it again, as a result of that, man, tongue-tied much, okay? I get paid to talk, it's cool. As a result of our good deeds, we silence the ignorance of fools. When people see our good deeds, we let our light shine among the Gentiles. When people come to know Jesus. We're going to continue to see that idea fleshed out this morning. So we submit to our government. We're good citizens. For the Lord's sake, we submit to our government. We honor everyone. We love the brotherhood. We fear God. We honor even the emperor. Well, seriously, it's Nero. He's burning people alive. Honor everyone. Hashtag not my emperor. Whether it's this guy or the last guy, I didn't vote for him. I don't agree with what he's doing. Honor everyone. Even the emperor. And pray for that guy because he needs his help. Keep your conduct honorable among the Gentiles. So we honor folks. In every human institution, even in the institution that God has ordained, the local church, sometimes there's not enough honor. Even the God-ordained institutions. We honor everyone. We honor the emperor. We do good so others may glorify God and know Him. We subject ourselves to the government. Peter continues to talk about this idea of being subject. And he moves from the government into the workplace. And so in verse 18, we see this said here that the Christians in exile, the servants be subject to your masters, with all respect, not only to the good and the gentle, but also to the unjust. For this is a gracious thing when mindful of God would endure sorrows while suffering unjustly. And what credit is it if when you sin and you're beaten for it, you endure? But when you do good and suffer for it, you endure. This is a gracious thing in the sight of God. For to this you've been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so you might follow in His footsteps. So we see this idea of being subject to the workplace. We see these servants, these bond servants. In some translations use the word slaves, but really it's this idea of a bond servant. Somebody who's not there against their will, who's working maybe in a household, is kind of a maid or a butler, a servant of sorts. And they're potentially there to pay off a debt, which again, that term bond servant ties in with that. And maybe if you get hired on to the right place, like maybe you get that good manager, you get that good boss. Or you luck out and you get that boss that literally is cracking the whip. You get that boss that is unjust. You get that marching around, barking orders all day, making you feel lesser boss. We subject ourselves to our masters. Again, I certainly did not honor my boss at this grocery store. don't know that he was necessarily this good and gentle master, but it didn't matter. And I was a punk 19-year-old kid that didn't know better, was immature enough to respond the way I did. So in your workplace, I don't know what you're facing on day-to-day level. Do you speak well of your master? Do you subject yourself and submit when your boss asks you to do something? And months and months go by and it's not been done, and then they hang it over your head later, and they let you go and your contract is up. Well, you didn't do this. I've never done that. And we do suffer. And maybe part of our suffering is we face activity or a decision that our boss wants us to do something that we know is not going to honor God. And as a result of that, we honor God first, hopefully, and we don't fudge the numbers, we don't cheat on the books, and then we suffer because maybe we lose that promotion or in fact get demoted or, removed from your department and never rescheduled again. And we suffer. But as this reminds us and tells us if we suffer for doing good, this is a precious thing, a gracious thing, inside of God. Christ told us we would suffer as Christians. He told us they would hate us. The world would hate us. But he also tells us that they hated him first. So if you're in that situation where it's hard to honor and subject yourself at your workplace, and you feel like you're suffering, and it really is this job that you don't enjoy going to, and you really feel like you're just there to pay off debt, and you check out and you're unattached. There's no heart investment. We still need to honor everyone. We still need to subject ourselves to our masters. Because Christ ultimately subjected himself to the cross. We're going to come back to that in a bit. Peter continues more to flesh out this idea of being subject. And so Peter's talked about our government, subjecting ourselves to our government, our emperors and governors. He's talked about subjecting ourselves to our masters. Well, now Peter enters the world of marriage in the home. And so I'm going to ask ladies, I know it's Father's Day, this isn't planned, this isn't an attack, it's not just some pat on the back for the dads in the house. Well, hold your tomatoes. Because he's talking about this idea of submission and subjection to your husbands. So we read in chapter 3, verse 1, it says, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands. So that even if some do not obey the word meaning God's word, the gospel message, even if they do not obey the word, they may be won without the word by the conduct of their wives. When they see your respectful and pure conduct, do not let your adorning be external. The braiding of the hair, the putting on of gold jewelry, or clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. So while ladies, I'm asking you to hold your tomatoes, guys, I'm asking you to hold your horses and not get too excited because, Pastor Josh just said, you have to call me Lord like Sarah did, and here's your subjects card that I made in arts and crafts, and you must yield to me as Lord. Pause, guys. It's Father's Day, it doesn't matter. It's a coincidence that this message lands on today. Be subject to your own husbands. We see a situation that very likely is a situation of an unequally yoked marriage. By unequally yoked, we're not talking about frying eggs. We're talking about two different people at two different places trying to pull together and make a household work. It's this idea of harnessing two animals together that are completely different. You've got an ox, you've got a donkey, and they're meant to pull up the same strength and the same speed and help plow the land in it. And work together, and it just doesn't work. At least it's pretty hard to make it work. And so we see, again, Paul writing to the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians about this idea of unequally yoked. In that chapter 6, verse 14, he says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? And again, as a youth pastor, I try to warn my kids a little bit or talk about this idea with them as they date and they look for that Mr. and Mrs. Right, whatever that is for them. And I ask them what the deal breakers are. What do you want in a future spouse? Well, I have to look pretty and be interested in riding horses, etc. Well, that's cool, but what about Jesus? Well, the Bible doesn't say a whole lot, really anything about dating. It sure talks an awful lot about marriage. And in this case, this is saying, look, don't marry someone who's a non-believer. And maybe this morning you're uncomfortably sitting next to that person already to know that that husband or wife next to you, they don't glorify God, they don't honor God, they don't obey the Word like you want them to. And it makes for a tough situation at home. Maybe you're sitting here this morning and you're not married. Keep this in mind as you look for that spouse. If you desire to be married someday, then God says, look, I want you to marry someone else that loves me too. Because as you continue to raise a home, build a home, and raise kids, and you're pulling in different directions, it's going to be tough. But Paul continues to talk about in 2 Corinthians that if you're already in that boat of marriage and that decision's been made, if you can make it work, make it work. Stay married, because God hates divorce too. But then at this time frame, God calls the men, again, ladies, this is God's plan. God calls us men to be the leaders of the home. And at that time, the men would make the decision for the family as to what religion they would follow, what church or temple they would go to. And the woman was expected to fall in line and go. And so here Peter says, look, even if your husband does not obey the Word, again, the gospel, the Word of God, if he does not obey the Word, he may be won over without a word. When they see respectful and pure conduct. Ladies, here's what this looks like. Is that you're not going to nag your husband into the throne room of God, to the gates of heaven, by complaining, kicking, and dragging him to church. That's not what this is saying at all. You want to win your husband over, ladies. You win them over by respectful, pure conduct. Even if we don't completely agree with what they're saying, we honor everyone, even our husband. Peter warns us to not let our main focus be external. Our fancy hair, may be nice just to have some hair to braid. Don't let it be your hair. Don't let it be your fine jewelry, your bling. Don't let it be your fancy clothes, but let your adorning be the quiet and gentle spirit. Which again, this is what's precious to God. Again, guys, I'm not saying your wives are going to be quiet. I think we know better. We expect to hear their opinion. We expect to hear them voice their concern. And we need to take that with a big grain of salt. Even as guys, even though this is written to the ladies, this is written to the wives, that external adorning, we live in the age of the metrosexual and the diva dudes. As guys, there's a ton of guys that, they wear just as much makeup as some ladies I know. Or the beard fad. When I had mega beard a year ago, I spent some time on that thing. How much do you have to look in the mirror to make yourself look pretty? And I don't even know that it was pretty. But the oil and the balm and the brushing, and then you got to blow drying and straightening and whatever. But we focus on our heart. If we focus on that gentle, quiet spirit, that thing that is precious, we focus on that just as much as we focus on this, paint the barn, we're going to turn some heads in a much, much better way. So ladies, don't nag your husband to Jesus. Submit to them, and you'll win them over by your conduct. Guys, verse 7. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel. Again, hold your tomatoes, ladies, not calling you weak, because they know better than that. Woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. This really is more of a physical thing. Whatever you can do, I can do better. It's not that. I had a Bible professor once talk about men and women in using this analogy of cups. And if you go camping or even look at camping supplies, like you see kind of blue speckled like tin plates and cups that you take camping with you, right? Because they're indestructible. So we can throw this around, we can check it against the wall, and that tin cup is fine. I don't know why they make tin cup. Like, I tried drinking coffee out of that one time. They're like, oh, burn my hands, you're going to hold that cup. I don't get that. It's besides the point. Men, we're built a little more rugged usually. We're physically stronger. We can take stuff. We can take that beating. But our wives are more like that fine china teacup. They're beautiful. They're delicate. They're a little more fragile than we are. And as men, if we're not careful, we can kick that teacup around and break it. So once again, this word honor comes up. Live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman. Men, we just talked about our wives submitting to us. Guys, if you want your wife to be that loving, submissive wife, you want to see that respectful conduct, you better give that wife something worth following. That doesn't mean if God is calling us to lead the home, you better lead well, men. And I know I don't do the best job. I know I fall short at times. But if you want them to do their part, we better be doing ours. And if we're not treating our wives in an honorable way, why would they submit for a second? Treat your wife honorable. They're heirs with you in grace, so your prayers may not be hindered. Guys, this is assuming that we are praying for our family. This is assuming we are praying with our family. And maybe it just starts at mealtime, like, hopefully a little more than rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub. But guys, that we are praying for our wives. You're praying for your kids, that they too might know Jesus. You're praying for yourself. God, help me to be the man and the father and the husband you've called me to be. Because while we do kind of live in that age of the metrosexual, I feel like we also live in the age of a bit of the emasculated male. And as men, we need to step up into our rightful place that God has called us to be. Happy Father's Day, men. Here's your card back. We need to lead well. We expect our wives to submit. Honor. Good. Living righteously. This is what Christ calls us to. This is what Peter is saying. Look, in this land of persecution, this is what I need you to do. This is what God needs you to do. Because Christ has set the example. What it means to really suffer. Church, let's go back to chapter 2, to verse 21. We're going to close with this section. Verse 21, for to this you've been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so you might follow in his steps. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin. We die to sin and we live to righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For you are straying like sheep, but have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. Now that sounds an awful lot like an Old Testament passage in the book of Isaiah. We read something very similar sounding in chapter 53, verse 6 and 7. And the prophet says this, all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. I'm talking about Jesus. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, like a sheep that is before its shears is silent, so he opened not his mouth. When Jesus really was betrayed by what should have been a best friend, handed over to Pilate, Jesus didn't stand there and revile, rebuke Pilate. You're an idiot. You're a terrible leader. What are you thinking? Handing this murderer, this convicted murderer and felon over to the people? I've done nothing wrong. Come on, Pilate, grow a pair. You're giving over to the people's demands. There's none of that. When Jesus was hanging on the cross, blood dripping from his wrists and his feet, getting scourged with the whip, cussed out the Romans doing it to him. It's okay. When he was hanging on the tree, he was hanging on the cross, he said very little. In fact, if he said anything, it was asking God for forgiveness for those that were persecuting him. Luke 23:34, Jesus says this while hanging on the cross. He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. While he was dying for the sins of the world, he was asking his Father to forgive those that were punishing him. In the midst of his suffering, when we suffer, what does our mouth look like? What do our actions look like? Jesus said, verse 21, he gave us the example. For this you've been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so you might follow in his footsteps. Speaking of next steps, what's your next step? Because, church, we're not going to submit to our government very well. We're not going to submit and subject ourselves to our workplace very well. We're not going to be a very good husband or a very good wife to lead well or submit well to that other party in that marriage if we don't first take a knee and yield to Jesus and calling him Lord and Savior. So what's your next step? Do you need to submit better to your government? Do you need to be just a better citizen and follow the laws of the land? Do we need to subject ourselves and submit at work, even if that boss is a tyrant? Do we need to subject and submit ourselves at home to the husband, even if he doesn't know Jesus? We need to lead well, men. First, before we do any of that, we need to first make sure we are submitted to Jesus, to know that he has that rightful place in our life. He set the tone. He suffered well. How will you serve? How will you suffer? How will you subject honorably as exiles before him?